Okay, hello everyone. I'm Richard Waring, the host of this wonderful event. And we have two wonderful feature poets, and then we'll have an open mic to hear from other members of this Zoom room. I want to start out first by sharing a few salient quotes for the evening. Galway Cannell says, "To me, poetry is somebody standing up, so to speak, and saying with as little concealment as possible what it is for him or her to be on earth at this moment." Nikki Giovanni says, "Writers don't write from experience, although many are hesitant to admit that they don't. If you wrote from experience, you'd get maybe one book, maybe 3 poems. Writers write from empathy." And then lastly, this is kind of an anonymous quote. "Poetry has been described as a migratory process where the journey of the poem is complete only when the poem reaches the ear of the listener by being read out loud." And that's what we are proudly doing tonight. So I want to introduce our first feature poet, Elizabeth Sylvia. She lives with her family in southeastern Massachusetts, where she teaches English. Her first book of poems, None by Witches, 2022, poems inspired by Shakespeare's female characters, was the winner of the 2021 Three Mile Harbor Press Book Award. Elizabeth's work is upcoming or has recently appeared in Verse Daily, Carve, Cherry Tree, Lily Poetry Review, On the Seawall, The Southern Review, and Swim, among others. She has been a semi or finalist in competitions sponsored by Diagram, 30 West, and Wolfson Press, and has been nominated for multiple pushcart prizes, and is a reader for Swim every day. Please welcome Elizabeth.
Thank you very much, Richard. I sort of wish I had changed my bio there. Now I feel kind of embarrassed to have listened to all those things about myself, but I'm very glad to be here tonight. And that Nikki Giovanni quote was perfect, because my book, which I started when I was reading through all of Shakespeare's plays, definitely is not about my personal experiences, but a lot about the empathy that I felt for his characters as I was writing. I'm going to start with a poem that was inspired by Troilus and Cressida, which is a play that Shakespeare wrote about the Trojan War. And one of the characters in Troilus and Cressida is the hero Ajax, who nobody thinks very much about. This is called Slow as the Elephant, Languageless, a Monster, is the quote from Troilus and Cressida that starts it. Athena loves Ulysses for his guile, Achilles for his prowess, does not love quiet Ajax, though he grows like a tree towards Olympus. What patron will visit Ajax in his tent at night and accompany the mammoth body, oiled and scraped, as it wades toward the dark waters of sleep? Patron of the last child chosen in gym class, patron of the one who stands awkwardly by the swings, patron of the girl who lingers while someone speaks to her friend, nervously cleaning her teeth with her tongue. Slow as the elephant, both Greeks and Trojans call Ajax. Brainless, dull, they say he carries his wit in his belly, his stomach in his head. The deceptiveness of men's talk itches Ajax's skin. Always there are those of us who drift slightly below the notice of the gods. Patron of the boy at the window at the edge of the field, patron of the extra whose face appears eternally in the crowd, waiting to be brought up from the minor leagues, from the typing pool. Patron of all of us who have felt blood coursing the looping roadways of the body and readied, but for whom no opening has come. And thinking about that, I'll read a poem called Resurrections that starts with a quote from All's Well That Ends Well. The hind that would be mated by the lion must die for love. What all the women in Shakespeare want, much more than to live, is dying. They promise it at every turn. I understand. I too tire at the sound of my voice, begin to stomp and boo in the hope I will hasten off stage left and make more room for the whoring and fighting. And to reprieve the embarrassment of having misjudged myself, thought myself brazenly faithless. Would I want to go on looking at myself? No. It's the shame of being noticed that gets me, though the promise to die goes always unremarked on, just like the love that inspires it burns in a little unnoticed closet where I could hang myself, but then somehow find myself again in the fifth act, all smiles and forgiveness. Women in Shakespeare are dying all the time, and some of them actually do playgoers the favor of dying before the play starts. And here is a poem that I wrote in the voice of the mother of the daughters in King Lear, who never exists in the play. But I'd like to think about how she would have felt about her daughters and the choices that they made. For those of you who haven't read King Lear since you were in high school, they are terrible daughters. Well, two of the three of them are really terrible daughters who set out to destroy their father. Though I think in some ways they might be justified. Mother tongue. Oh, my daughters, I knew what would come to you, for I had my part in it, bringing you women into the world. You did not fault me, though you had seen how favor lands on a woman like sunshine that soon passes behind a cloud. When I married your father, no one pretended it was love but me. He seemed wide as an ocean, giving words and lands settled on his hoard of devotion. Some said a passion could be made there, before the rains and the wind changed my body, before his body changed mine. A woman must hold cunning like a needle, embroidered lily pillows of her words. Who believed Lear could cast aside Cordelia, little blossom of his own image? It was the shadow you suspected, but had kept away with freighted tongues. You wondered what would shelter you, saw the dark rains coming despite the softness in your mouths. Oh, my daughters, everywhere men in the service of men spread their disorders through your quiet houses, reminding you that you are more daughter than woman, less daughter than serpent misguided in your nest, which, like your body, can never be yours. Another play in which there are no moms is The Merchant of Venice. This poem isn't a persona poem, but it does think about the kinds of losses that are incurred not only in the play, but also before the play, and how when you lose someone, you lose the people behind them. It's called My Ducats, My Daughter. And it comes from a phrase in Merchant of Venice where Shylock, after his daughter, whose name is Jessica, runs away, he runs around Venice yelling, "My ducats, my daughter," because she stole a lot of his money and valuables also. So he's beside himself for multiple reasons. What worth has money in the land of grief? If we have one story of despair, it is Orpheus going penniless into Hades, for he aims to bring Eurydice in view unchanged. There is no currency for this, the rage of grief, a weapon of its howling voice. Jessica runs from Shylock's home, a little bird twittering in the tree with no memory of a nest. How fully Shylock has lost his child. She takes also the turquoise ring that once promised him to her mother. Beyond price, memory is a beaten metal. Oh, Shylock, that cannot be weighed. There is no road of sacred rules that will bring back our beloveds. Everywhere we are asked the exchange rate of our sorrow. We watch the grieving on television repeat, "It's not about the money." Candles, chrysanthemums, teddy bears. Once I passed a bicycle sprayed white and hung like a cross. Inviolate defendants suggest venality corrupts the sorrow of the grieved, staining it with the common. What, though, is more common than loss? Jessica pawning the turquoise ring, throwing the price of it off her shoulders like a shawl. Love falling through our fingers, money all we are allowed. When we desire instead, flesh taken in anger, flesh of our flesh returned. I feel like I don't know how long to pause between. I feel like I'm running right along. I'm like, should I be waiting? The next one I picked for tonight is called Mouths of Honey. And this poem was inspired by Henry IV, Part 2. I want to say, you don't need to know a lot about Shakespeare to read this book because, as you can hear, most of the poems aren't super attached to the plays. But I will say this one starts with an epigram. Our thighs packed with wax, our mouths with honey, we bring it to the hive, and like the bees are murdered for our pains. And that is King Henry IV, complaining about how ungrateful children are. And so this is my poem about being an ungrateful child. No wax on a bee's thigh, no thighs on a bee. No honey in her mouth unless she steals it from a weaker hive. What do larvae care for origin? We are all the offspring of despot kings, the bulls of our bellies singing for treasure without question. Every father, some King Henry, twisted with guilt at having cleaved another down to take his place, and desperate, his own son will seem a product of the natural dawn. Bursting from the cells of our making, we find the glorious hive already built. Comb upon comb. What matter then? The huddle in the empty skep, the wars, the droning for demanded fealty. Children dance in the counting house, flowing golden. Loose with honey wine, we lay our fingers on the crown before the fathering king is dead. Here's another one maybe about being a child in a way called Such Honesties. And this one starts with a quote from the Merry Wives of Windsor. He has studied her well and translated her will out of honesty into English. That made me, as a poet, that made me laugh. Such honesties. Maybe I was born with a pocket dictionary of honesty in my chest and a knot under my tongue. Maybe my mother knew by the way I suckled that I'd cut or be cut. And maybe she didn't want to sleep with one eye on the door, waiting for Alexander to untie me. So she snipped that extra fillet and filled my mouth with blood I couldn't tell from milk. When you don't know tears from food, you know you are born a girl. Maybe that dictionary kept on thumping through the 1,000 sets of monkey bars and all the doors of the grammar school on the green hill under the sky crammed with clouds. And I read story after story about girls who'd been enchanted so that toads fell out of their lips. A witching freedom from all the faithless way language bends in the hearer's ear, quite beyond my own aired will.
Mhm.
I'm just going to read a couple more, including this one that was inspired by a nest of baby doves that I found in a tree that my husband had cut down in our yard. And after we cut it down, we realized that there was a pair of baby birds in it. But I will spoil this by saying that they indeed survived, which was amazing. And the poem was inspired by the romance between two young girls in Two Noble Kinsmen, which doesn't happen in the play, but is talked about by by a girl named Amelia, who says that she'll never be able to fall in love with a man, that no man could ever be like her beloved friend who had already died. And this is called What Does Not Last. My daughter brings me trembling in the chalice of her hands a nest of hatchling doves. This is the tenderness I imagine Amelia feels, taking the hand of her beloved. They built one another little meadow things. What does not last cannot fear time. Flower wreaths from what the callous eye passed over. Felling the twisted pine that grew too close to the foundation dropped the nest. For some, a meadow is the measure between one conquest and the next. Little blooms they tucked between their breasts. Such gentleness comes knowing. The precious births from the care we take of what is fragile. We all are hid when we lie down between the grasses. Invite summer warmth to the maiden quiet. The nestlings did live to fly. Amelia's love could not.
Heartbreaking.
And I'll close with a poem called Hiraeth, which is a Welsh word meaning kind of homesickness for a thing that's lost into the past. If anybody is familiar with Portuguese, it's very similar to the term saudade. Hiraeth. And this is just inspired by a scene in Henry IV where a Welsh princess who doesn't speak any English it just says here she sings a Welsh song. And this is my vision of her song. Hiraeth. Sometimes I throw stones in the river that runs between our countries. Sometimes I am the stone who falls to the river bottom. My head is a stone that falls out of language, your English words passing over me as I sit here. I live beneath a diving bell, and time no longer makes himself known to me. You may be gone an hour or a day, my love. I do not know you. Whether your mouth is open or closed, your words cannot move me. Sometimes when I throw stones in the river, I imagine myself carried away from here. Imagine a love that carries me on its back, like the water carries a leaf that the wind has carried into the current of its hands. When this love holds me, I feel nothing but lightness, see nothing but sky. Thank you.
Wow, that was terrific. What a deep well for you to draw water from to create these poems. It really is so resonant. Thank you so much. Shakespeare's never been so clear to me as tonight.
It was an amazing experience to read all of the plays back to back the way I did. And I would recommend it to anybody, but don't try to do it here.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much.
So up next, we have Linda Lamenza. Linda is a poet and literacy specialist in Massachusetts. Her work is forthcoming or has appeared in Green Ink Poetry, Lily Poetry Review, San Pedro River Review, the Comstock Review, Tishman Review, and elsewhere. Her chapbook, Left-Handed Poetry, was a finalist for Hunger Mountain's May Day Book Chapbook series and is forthcoming with Finishing Line Press. Please welcome Linda.
Thank you. It's such an honor to read with you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here. There's so many people here that are from different parts of my life. It's lovely to see you all. Thank you. So as Richard mentioned, I had my chapbook accepted recently, just this year. And so I'll read a few poems from Left-Handed Poetry, which I'm actually not left-handed. The left-handed came from being in an accident and having to learn to write with my left hand because I couldn't use my right. Here's the first one. Another ambulance daydream. I was in our kitchen making sauce, garden tomatoes simmering in their well of loneliness. I was dancing barefoot on the schooner Hindu, watching the coast soar by, playing flute on the quarterdeck. I know we walked through Provincetown. I drove. You flew. Eggs Benedict at Cafe Edwidge. I lose myself at the song of myself among the intimate photographs of strangers. I know I am somewhere between earth and sky, I think. Honda Pilot. Truth is the purple swollen disaster of my foot, where her tire wrecked me in the mobile parking lot. My right elbow, a shattered bone I can no longer lean on. Now I'm part of her SUV, my DNA forever embedded in her bumper. It's weird to do a reading without hearing people afterwards. So every once in a while I'll look up to make sure you're all still here.
Yeah.
Ambulance daydream. Surrender to motion, be carried by strangers, backfloat on the sea. Feel the burning sand, my broken foot, my elbow seaweed, hooks that hold bottles or clouds above. My good arm shields my eyes from the fake sun. Ambulance wheels are sandpipers skittering the threshold. The glistening IV bag, jellyfish that looms. The monitor that beeps, a laughing gull. think this is my last one from Left-Handed. Oh, no, I got two more. Okay. Left-Handed Poetry. It's the title poem. 2 weeks post-surgery, episode of Breaking Bad briefly holds my attention. Extra large cucumber shows up in the garden. My sister gives me a shimmering tattoo of a mermaid in honor of her birthday. Oliver Sacks dies on August 30th while I'm reading his biography. I create a plan for the first day of school, though I won't be teaching. I pretend to go. See the new Mission Impossible movie, Rogue Nation. Dog retrieves his lost chew toy from under the sofa. I FaceTime with Madeline. Compare pains.
Hmm.
Okay, it's my last one from Left-Handed. 4 months later, I walk again. On my first walk, a short one, I pause to consider my greatest fear, acorns. Hundreds of them like landmines beneath my feet. I tread gingerly. Atop a pickup truck, a man showers grass seed across the berm, nods to me. The paddock on Bedford Road contains the horse, still wearing a tartan plaid blanket. His eyes search mine. In a clear plastic bag, a sandwich lies on the sidewalk. Seems lonely. I stand at the doorway to Mrs. Williams' house, peek in at her indoor rock garden. St. Francis statue stands in ferns, urges me onward.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to change gears a little bit. And this is more new material. Recipe for spring. On the way over the Sagamore, Best says, throw your troubles in the Cape Cod Bay. Taste icy, briny air. Watch red fox sweep by dunes. Sleep in. Cross over to the beach. Frozen feet in April ocean. Touch the salty seaweed. Birds declare morning. Sudden rains shape sandcastles. Osprey, settle. Hydrangea buds hide beneath dry sticks. Quiet runs deep. I have a couple of poems that have my daughter in them.
Hmm.
Learner's Permit. Anna adjusts her mirrors, shouts dumbass at the driver who cuts her off on Route 2. In the passenger seat, I unwrap an orange Tootsie Pop to soothe my anxiety. I say out loud, I can't believe you're driving me past Lexington Montessori School as we pass for preschool. I'm focused on an idea of heaven, the sun with rays splayed behind clouds, where Nani lived after she went to heaven, or rather Nani's idea of heaven, such as high-quality meals served all day. Anna murmurs, good job, mother, as I release the grab handle, readjust the seatbelt, resist the urge to post a picture I sneak to take of her behind the wheel. She would hate that. First semester freshman year. My daughter drives my car on Route 2 East or en route to Alewife Station to drop her off, her return trip to college. When we arrive, she says, I can't go now. There's something wrong. I grant her permission to turn the car around to head back on Route 2 West. I say I'll bring her back the next morning. At home, our family greets her without surprise, without confusion. Gap year. It's too dry, my 18-year-old accuses. Anna was actually talking about my bread and not my propensity to inflict consequences for being late. The wet towels on her floor make me crazy. Anna's consequences involve work at a preschool, anything to keep out of trouble. Today's assignment, infant room. Babies do nothing, mother. Her departure for college was only 6 months ago. I wrapped her crystal and tiny Buddha statue, packed a bag full, ramen noodles, trash bags, Windex, and mint Milano cookies. A flashlight, too. I gave her safety. She threw it in the desk drawer. When she was 4, she wouldn't leave us either. They taught us how to hold her tightly to soothe her, to keep her from getting hurt. No way she would go quietly to preschool or anywhere we wanted. That makes me laugh. Okay, so I have some mother poems. My mother insists on making curtains. At Joanne Fabrics, after I pay for the voile, she steals a handful of polished decorative shells from Indonesia. They slip from her hands and rain onto the linoleum. My mother, shoplifting shiny things. She bends to grab them, to shove them in her pants pocket. Tells me she has a specific vision. Tell best to drill tiny holes in the stolen shells. Suspend them from clear wire on the finials for those beach cottage curtains, the ones that frame our view. Gray Advertising, 1957. I am merely a machine. Tap out letters all day long. Can't even shift my weight. She pounds on my keys from 9 to 5. Ding! A brief respite at 12:30. I love the silence after lunch. Too fast typing makes my striker stick. Yesterday, I spat out invoices, all official with due date underscored. Today, office memos. Nearly fell asleep on the 12th one. Weary work hours, craving a freshly inked ribbon. Stillness is my balm. My favorite time, 5:01. Life advice from my mother. You need some good decaf black coffee. You must never allow a knife to meet lettuce. Pieces of anything should be no bigger than the tip of your pinky. Don't smash the dough or the cookies will be like hockey pucks. You should always blanch and have on hand. Go to the Italian deli and buy a couple of anchovies. Use Crisco, it softens. You want it light? Do not use paste. Keep AIRY, don't pack it, or it will taste like sawdust. Weighing down eggplant gets rid of the bitter. Relationships are like flowers. Ignore them and they die. Okay, I'm going to read this sort of relatively new poem called Sourdough. And there's an epigraph at the beginning. Until I feel like a happy Sisyphus. Linda Pastan. I feed my starter every day. 50 grams water, 50 grams flour. Use a cup of that starter each week to bake a sourdough bread. Until we go out of town and I forget about my starter. I should have fed it flour and water before I left, at the back of the fridge. 6 months later, I return home. I rush to examine the spoiled starter, way past sourdough. Pink mold streaks, some kind of bacteria, not fruity, fresh, nor yeasty. Instead, it reeks of vinaigrette. I must throw it away. Begin again. Mom says never throw food away. So I leave it in the back corner of the fridge. It's actually still sitting there. I have 2 more, and they're a little bit more serious poems. This first one is poem for Brittany Griner. And the epigraph is, there's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. I should say this is a golden shovel, so if you have that interest, you can listen for it. There's a myth of safety abroad for Americans. We're never safe outside the US. A basketball player's been exchanged for a Russian criminal, as if that's equality. As if use of cannabis is the issue for Americans, as if anyone listens to me. Black, female, lesbian, she's not the president nor Steph Curry. Freedom for American citizens in a world where no one still walks without this basic right. Every American deserves to return to her homeland, reunite with her wife, her children, to not be imprisoned for a decade of her young life. The incarceration, 155 days, a hostage never free. Glad she made it home. This is my last one. This is called 4 minutes, 19 seconds. Urgency prevails. Peaceful vistas, forgiveness, art. Rewrite the refrain. Can celebrations put a brief stop to our destructive human nature? Nazis, hate, racism, war, inhumanity, slavery. History repeats itself like a bloody refrain. We humans use 30% more resources than the earth can replenish each year. Pollution, global poverty, hunger. What about global warming, deforestation, chemical farming, air and water? Will we blow ourselves into extinction in World War III? Freedom of expression, the right to work, to have an education, basic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom from slavery. Will my children have a safe, peaceful planet? I worry about the future as I witness it become the past. Thanks so much for listening.
Wow. So nice. So nice. Have you thought about sending your poem to Brittany? I bet she would appreciate that.
That's awesome. I haven't thought about that. I will think about that. Thank you.
Really wonderful, wonderful reading all over. Thank you so much. Okay, we have some other voices in the room that we're going to hear from now. And first off, let me introduce and present to you the one and only David Miller.
You know, David Miller is such a familiar name. All we can do is say that he's the only one here at the moment. Thank you, Richard, and yeah, Elizabeth and Linda, thank you very much for what you brought. Yeah, I was really absorbed by it. So this poem, it has an epigraph, which I will read to you, but the title is My Idle Body, and the epigraph is from Donald Hall's poem, Without. It might be possible to take up a pencil. It might be possible to take up a pencil without waiting for a good muse wrestle, to grab and move the thing, as in the way shame forgets itself when my hands push a sudsy sponge across dinner plates or arms raise a hedge trimmer to our wild wisteria. My anxiety is smitten with mirror, mirror. I know that man, known him all my life. Anguish's pleased affirmation. Sudden grimace, chin dropped to chest on a city bus, or in the middle of another's poem about a mother. My idle body, a festival of self-reproach, chewing the cotton candy of despond. It might be possible to take up a pencil, conjugate myself toward to be, to do, the two verbs at once, full in every tense, all my tenses as one. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, David. And now, please welcome Margot Wazansky.
That was a lovely reading, Elizabeth and Linda. Really, really lovely. Season with no name. No trappings of winter today. Not a ripple in the harbor. Flat. No ice, no snow. No chill rips through my bones. My breath invisible in the air. Too early for spring, this no-name season. Last month, waves crashed through the bushes into the yard, left a new pond when the water subsided. Just up the road, another, and the year turned. I go out to walk under the arch of trees where the road narrows. Nothing fresh here except for a few snowdrops. And the light, the sky brilliant as July. Have the ashen bones of the familiar shifted? Swarms of refugees still cross over their borderlands. The dying earth can't feed them. In his pasture, the farmer is fattening 3 new steer, yellow tags in their ears, number 14, number 23, number 6.
Thank you, Margot. Up next is Wendy Drexler.
Thank you, Richard, and wonderful reading, Elizabeth and Linda. It's great to hear both of you. This is called At Hanson's Farm. I'm sitting with friends on a white metal folding chair, nibbling strawberry shortcake with berries we've picked from the farm's ragged acres, biscuits we bought from the farm stand, vanilla ice cream we've sweet-talked from Hanson's wife, who said they sold it only on weekends, but gave it to us anyway. Magic we've cobbled for the day, when out the corner of my eye, a sparrow is chasing what looks like a smaller bird down to the ground. What's landed isn't a bird, and what I first take for eyes are like a child's chalk drawing, huge black ovals painted on top of the head, and below flows a 2-inch long body, wing covers speckled like rhinestones. Oh, how generous is the world to have concocted such a Baroque dazzler, an Eastern-eyed click beetle. Praise the beetle, praise the deception of those eyes, their beauty told slant, eyes as large as an owl's, flat black, and the O of the inscribed white eye rings. Praise the shutter of the sun's lens widening, spring solstice just around the corner from now, in the steady click click of the seconds. Praise my lingering here, knowing I'll be home late for dinner. Traffic will be killer. The ice cream's melting and I'd better eat it now. Better lean into the swaggering, bountiful, buggy blue yonder, the crumbly, slightly stale biscuits, berries with the heat of straw still in them. Praise knowing I don't want to be like Eve, unable to savor the sweetness until after, until time ran two-legged and out the burning gates. Thank you.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Richard.
Oof. And now we have Steve Nickman.
Thank you, Richard. You do so much for us. And thank you, Elizabeth and Linda. I have a father poem. Shortchanged. My father was 5 feet 4 inches tall, left-handed and colorblind. He had a birthmark on his left temple, like a tiny cherry. He was chief of pediatrics, and once a woman told me he'd saved her son's life. He had his suits tailored at Coetzee and Bolano's. I went with him once. Mr. Bolano was tall and called him doctor. Then Dad and I had lunch in the automat. At the steam table, he got into an argument with the man next to him in line. His face clouded, his voice went deep. They were going to step outside and fight. What might happen to me there in the big city? It stopped as soon as it began. Then I knew him again. Once at dinner, he began carving the roast. The knife wasn't performing, and he blamed my mother for not having sharpened it. I thought that would have been his job. He was thunder, and left the room. By my early teens, I noticed that most of the girls in my class were taller than I was. One night, my father invited me into his study. He shut the door. He sat in his red leather armchair with brass studs, where he'd been sipping Courvoisier and keeping his records. There was no other chair, just a stool with a rotating green seat. He told me I might go on being short, and that could be hard. I was short. He had said the word about me, said it to me. The thing about me that I hadn't let myself think about. I didn't say anything. I didn't understand. He was talking about himself and loving me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Steve. And now, Diane Silvestri.
Short poems because Richard has given me that permission. The first, well, I'm not sure either poem is done. And the first, because of that, I took to a recent workshop, a revision workshop. Here is the first. Outdone. My boot barely skirts it. I huff disgust. Yearn to shame whoever's to blame for the seeping mower or truck whose motor leaked the slick. A polluted puddle. I growl until I notice the marvel. Reminiscent of a celestial arc, though less evanescent. That heavenly promise dissolving before I can click its image. While this steady sheen sustains its hues, tones markedly exotic and neon strong. Saffron, fuchsia, peacock, mulberry, chartreuse. The humble drop cloth upstaging the ethereal canvas. After a workshop in which we were given specific directions for what steps to take, this is the poem revised, entirely different. The wonder. My boots barely touched him. I hugged myself in a terrible way, years of embarrassment, no one to blame to get rid of lies. Motorcycle careening on an oil slick, my growing up before I realized it, until I noticed, even if not good news at first, the promise of heaven. Can I click on your picture while this can still be heard, supports its voice, its tones? Exotic and plain, less evangelism, however strong, a burning bush, a white paper, no, a dye vat of autumn. The fabric is endless.
Interesting, very interesting exercise. Thank you, Diane. And now, the penultimate reader for the night, Carrie Loftman.
Hello,
So,
thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think I might go back and read some Shakespeare. And maybe I'll start spouting such beautiful language in your poetry. Thank you so much. And Linda, what can I say? It's always been an honor and a pleasure to be in workshop with you and to hear the finished work from the poems that you've brought to workshop, some of them many times. It's just wonderful. Thank you so much. I have a poem that's very new too. And the title is Rack Line, which is the highest point on the beach where the tide just dumps everything, organic matter, flotsam, jetsam, whatever we throw in the oceans. So this is my poem on the beach. Rack Line. I wander first encounter beach of an evening to inhale the pungent smell of salt. In bed, my toes in sea glass shards, where my periwinkle striped trousers rolled. Beached by love's absence, I strip myself bare of sinew, flattened skin to sew a vessel, to catch the ignis fatui hovering in bioluminescent algae. You have tithed me here, desire ebbing on the turquoise tide. Sometimes we live in pure aqua, sometimes lapis stone, sometimes loss laps stone and splits the plains of my quartz heart. I go all sedimentary. Thank you.
Really, really nice. Wow. I will close things out like a bookend with a poem recently conceived called What Matters. Take water and bread from me, and I'll feast only with my eyes on the bird promising sky. Paying attention lights the dead wood of my heart where little beauties are concerned. A good word for God is not me. Now my body has no boundary that's not a geography of praise. I'm filled every day with oxygen that just left off being inside of a leaf. When yesterday brings his thieving brethren, I'll have dinner on the grill, a glass in hand, ready to hear sorrow sing for her meal. I'll ask Mother Wind, when can I publish your music? All I need for inspiration is a warbler in the most branch. There is no other muse than what the earth supplies. Well, thank you everyone for such a wonderful evening. It really fills my heart with joy and gratitude. And if anyone has any comments to make, they will be gratefully heard and received.
Well, I'll just say one thing that actually for Elizabeth, I was so gratified that you dug so deeply, not only into plays that are less often cited, Troilus and Cressida, the Two Noble Kinsmen, for heaven's sake, right? Really, but into characters like the Welsh princess who only seem to appear. I mean, in other words, it really goes in very deeply, and I look forward to the book. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I will quietly plug that this is available now for anybody who'd like to read it.
Excellent, excellent.
I'd love to.
On Amazon, I assume.
On Amazon or small press, or you can get it. You can contact me and I'll send you a signed copy. If you email me at my website, it's just elizabethsylvia.net.
Terrific, terrific.
Thank you. And thanks to everybody for being here. You were one of the best silent audiences I've ever read to.
I would like to echo that. What a great silent audience. Thank you so much.
I wanted to ask Elizabeth if you're working on a sort of around a new theme now. I mean, this book is so beautifully focused, and this is sort of such a mission. Are you writing toward a particular theme now, or just sort of writing and seeing what shows up?
Embarrassingly enough, I have an entirely new book that I've written, but I haven't started submitting it for publication yet. It's a collection of poems. And this is good for me to practice my elevator pitch. It's a collection of poems in which Marie Antoinette operates as a historical figure and an imaginary friend who is accompanying me through the cataclysmic end of the world that's been caused by climate change and our excessive reliance on the natural world and the destruction that's happening around us.
Oh, wow.
So it's about privilege and climate, and also about the way that we often use nature to make us feel good, even though we're not really returning the favor.
Wow.
Wow.
And little stuff like that.
Yeah, just
Thanks
a
for asking.
simple tale, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I find as a nature poet myself that it's discouraging to write on that topic when it's deteriorating and vanishing. It's kind of like a data requiem. in front of
Yeah,
your eyes,
it's like
yeah.
every nature poem is an elegy now.
Mm.
Yeah.